This was a huge year for Sonic, and also the year that one of his most beloved games came out. Sonic 3 and Knuckles. See, Sonic the Hedgehog 3 was a big game. A huge game. They even had Michael Jackson work on some of the tracks. But here's the thing. They had this big promotional deal with McDonald's, so they needed to get the game out by that time. But the game was going to be the biggest one yet, and to fit that on a special cartridge was going to be costly. So they went with a unique strategy to release half the game as Sonic 3 before the promotion, and the other half the game when it finished as Sonic 3 and Knuckles. And then, using what they called lock-on technology, you could combine the cartridges and get a full game. It slightly did change a few things, but it gave you a whole game. And what's more is you can play as Knuckles. And you can even combine it to Sonic 2 to play as Knuckles there too. So yeah, Sonic 3 and Knuckles is the big game of this year, and we are going to take a peek at the manuals for both of them in Japan and for the rest of the world. I am playing the Origins version, which does have some musical tracks changed due to licensing issues.
Where do the stars of Sega Sonic 3 go when the game's over?
Sonic? Are you guys in there?
No, they're at McDonald's, where Sonic launches with a push of a button and Tails flies who knows how high. 4 fearless toys, one with each Sonic 3 Happy Meal you buy.
Alright, so starting with Japan, I'm going to go through both Sonic 3 manual and the Sonic and Knuckles manual. The game picks up directly after Sonic 2. Eggman's death egg is falling out of the sky and crashed hard into a floating island. By floating, I mean in the sky and not the water. This is later called Angel Island, but right now it doesn't have that name and it is just called the Floating Island. Meanwhile, on a different island that is actually in the water, Tails has a machine that can detect Chaos Emeralds and he's like, oh snap, it's picking one up. And then meanwhile, Sonic is napping and looking at relics and remembering an ancient civilization that once tried to fuck with a giant powerful stone but ended up destroying all of that civilization immediately. Just poof, gone. This stone becomes the Master Emerald, although in Sonic 3 it isn't called that yet, and it doesn't get called the Master Emerald till the and Knuckles part shows up. Also, that's how the Dwemer vanished in Morrowind, kind of. Anyway, apparently the gods flew down from heaven and restored a tiny bit of the land as a floating island and put the Master Emeralds there. Now, we don't see the gods, that's just legend, but the civilization exists, and so does the Master Emerald, and so does a floating island, so I feel like it's safe to assume that there are apparently gods in the Sonic universe. Anyway, so Sonic is like, hey, I'm gonna go find that island, and Eggman, he's trying to find the Chaos Emeralds on Angel Island in order to get the Death Egg up and running again. We also got the new character, Knuckles the Echidna, and it goes through some basic stuff everybody knows about him, like that he's an echidna, he's the guardian of the Master Emerald, and he's naive, and he can also dig holes. But two things I didn't know. It says he doesn't hate girls, but maybe he's somewhat not good with them. That's just funny as shit to me. Like, why put that there? I hope if someone ever makes a bio about me, they don't put nasty shit like that in there. He also likes fruit and hates strong sunlight. I don't know if that'll ever come up again, but now we know that. So Knuckles is apparently guarding 7 Chaos Emeralds. And in fact, in a lot of these manuals and stuff, it says he's the guardian of the emeralds, which is interesting. Anyway, a big flash of light happens, and when Knuckles wakes up, he sees that the Chaos Emeralds are gone. And he also sees a giant egg, and Knuckles is like, oh shit, we have the legends of a giant egg that will cause destruction. So he's like, well, I better go investigate. And then Eggman, he lies to Knuckles, and he's like, oh, I'm just a scientist studying the egg. And there's this evil shit named Sonic who's hurting me, and he's trying to steal the Chaos Emeralds, Knuckles. And Knuckles is like, yeah, I totally believe you. Just immediately he believes him. Now, in the English version, it is surprisingly basically the same, but told in like a shorter format. The only big difference I saw was no mention of the Power Rock or what we know as the Master Emerald. Instead, it just talks about him being the guardian of the Chaos Emeralds. Anyway, before we jump into the Sonic and Knuckles manual, we should first play the first half of the game. Now the game starts with Knuckles punching the crap out of Super Sonic so hard that it knocks the emeralds out of him. And then he chuckles, which is really important to note because later games will claim he does not chuckle. A blatant lie, as can be seen right here. From here you start the game. One thing to note, our levels are far bigger here, both in depth for exploration and also just plain longer. Bosses still suck. Special stages to get the emerald involve this minigame called Blue Spheres, and you do want to explore the land so that you can find giant gold rings that take you there, and thus Sonic 3 has a greater emphasis on exploration than the other ones. Blue Spheres is popular enough with the community that it has its own mode and its own fan game of just Blue Spheres. And frankly, I absolutely hate this so much. I fucking suck at it. I can't stand it. It's not fun to me. Like, I got some of the emeralds, but Jesus, this is my least favorite little special stage to do yet. There's also like bonus stages for you if you can collect 50 rings and jump at the checkpoint, but those just give you items like shields. Speaking of which, Sonic has a new move called the Insta Shield, which lets him make a tiny momentary shield while doing a jump attack. On top of that, Sonic also has a variety of new shields that do useful things, like help him collect rings or breathe underwater. You can also use Tails to help you reach high places as he carries you. The levels also have the best transitions, as they can go straight from one scene and into the other. Overall, this game is just much bigger and with way more to it. And it's only half a game. It also has some levels I really enjoy, like the Carnival Night Zone and the Ice Cap Zone in which Sonic snowboards, which is so cool that they brought it back in the 3D years later. Eggman manages to get the Death Egg up again, and we knock it right back down, and it falls and crashes to the island below. And now it's time for the Sonic and Knuckles portion, so let's jump back to the manuals. Right on the Japanese cover it says, Sonic races through the green fields. The sun races through a blue sky filled with white clouds. The way of the heart are much like the sun. Sonic runs and rests. The sun rises and sets. Don't give up on the sun. Don't make the sun laugh at you. That's just fucking hilarious. What do you mean, don't make the sun laugh at you? I'm really sad they don't have this kind of bizarre writing on Sonic manuals anymore. I love this and whatever the hell it was trying to say. So the manual starts with talking about the crash of the Death Egg. Sonic is like, oh well, I should probably go destroy that Death Egg once and for all. But then he found a special ring that could teleport him, and this ring took him to a mysterious altar where the Master Emerald is, and it's actually called the Master Emerald here. It's also described as like a really big Chaos Emerald, which I don't know if that's true, but I guess it does kind of look like that. Sonic's like, that's weird. What's that about? Anyway, I'm gonna go back to fighting Knuckles and the Death Egg. And then the English version is basically the same again, except Sonic didn't use a magic ring to see the Master Emerald. He just already fucking knew where it was somehow. Now back to Sonic and Knuckles. This continues exactly like Sonic 3, because it is, and it's just the second half of the game. More things I haven't mentioned is just how many gimmicks this game has. Each zone has a gimmick, and then the second act will keep that gimmick and add another. Sonic 3 is a game where you can just for sure memorize to become great at it. It doesn't really encourage the experimentation that Sonic CD does, and that isn't a bad thing. It just means each time you play, you are going to seem significantly better at Sonic 3, having learned everything. And I know this is so many people's favorite game, but I gotta say, I don't like some of the zones. And them being longer adds to my frustration a little bit. Mainly the Death Egg zone. That zone is no good. Of course, that doesn't mean all the zones. I really love Sandopolis, with all the ghosts who put you on a time limit to not make angry, and just exploring that vast temple. And both Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 also have like little temple levels that they might owe their existence to this level. Now there is a boss fight with this guy who is apparently Mecha Sonic Mark II, not to be confused with Metal Sonic. This is the second version of that boss boss from Sonic 2. And I really like his look, and it's also interesting that Mecha Sonic has been upgraded as a more powerful version, showing Eggman is still working on that idea. I'd really like to see a rivalry, kind of, between Metal Sonic and Mecha Sonic, but as far as I know, that doesn't ever happen. Mecha Sonic Mark II is Knuckles' final boss in his story mode. Anyway, Sonic uses a magic teleporter thing and ends up where the Master Emerald is. He then fights Knuckles, and while he does, a prophecy is on the wall. One with a giant monster holding the Master Emerald and fighting a glowing hedgehog-looking thing. Eggman then steals the Master Emerald, and Knuckles is like, "Oh no, I've been duped. I'll help you, Sonic." And then you fight Eggman and his big robot with the Master Emerald being used as a weapon. Was this the prophecy? Maybe. And then you defeat him and the emerald gets returned to the floating island and the floating island itself floats again. Now, if you got the bad ending like me, you're gonna beat Eggman, but the Master Emerald is gone and the island doesn't float again. But if you collect all 7 Chaos Emeralds in Sonic 3, you can turn into Super Sonic, and then if you enhance those 7 in Sonic and Knuckles, you can become Hyper Sonic, an even more powerful version. And that's just playing way too much blue spheres for me, man. No thank you. But Hyper Sonic has his own final boss, and that's how you return the island to floating. Also, Knuckles can become Hyper Knuckles and Tails can become Super Tails. So basically, Hyper Sonic is like Super Saiyan level 2 Sonic and Dragon Ball Z terms, since it likes to take from that. Anyway, that's Sonic 3 and Knuckles. This felt like it took forever to beat compared to the others, and that's because it really did, but it isn't a bad game. In fact, it's most people's favorite. I am gonna say though, while this game had the best story yet, I do prefer the gameplay of Sonic CD, and also the music. I know that's a wild opinion, whatever, that's just my personal preference. Anyway, moving on, Sonic had other games than this. For the Game Gear, he had Sonic Triple Trouble, another 8-bit Sonic adventure with either Sonic or Tails, and Knuckles is still chuckling for some reason. It's alright and has been recreated as a 16-bit fan game as well, and you can find that online. He also has Sonic Drift, a Japan-exclusive kart racer, and despite being a kart racer, it reminds me more of like Pole Position than it does like Mario Kart. Nothing too special, but you can play as Amy and Eggman and Tails as well. Then on the Sega Pico, which was a Sega educational system, you have Sonic the Hedgehog's Game World. This is surprisingly not really an educational game and is more like a lot of shitty mini games. It might be closer to Mario Party than an actual educational game, but like it doesn't look great. You then have Tails the Music Maker, also on the Pico, and I'm not sure what kind of game it is. It looks like it has a focus on timing movements to music, except when it doesn't have that focus at all. And then Sad AM had a second season that ended in a cliffhanger, and fans are actually trying to make a season 3 of that now, and they've been working on that for a while. But yeah, Sad AM ended this year, and reruns of the adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog are also airing. He also had multiple food brand deals like Honey Nut Cheerios and Franco-American. Alright, let's move on to the comics.
Food.
Sonic the Hedgehog pasta new from Franco-American. What are you playing for lunch?
So starting with Sonic Archie again, issues 6 through 17 were released. Within these issues included a Sonic Spinball tie-in and a Sonic and Knuckles tie-in. Both feel super half-assed, as if the creators really didn't want to do tie-ins at all. This is also when we get Ken Penders as a writer, who I know is not well loved by the community, and while I can't exactly remember why, I'm sure I'll find out as this goes on. This run also has a ton of references to things, like Botman instead of Batman, Spawn Mower instead of Spawn, King Gong instead of King Kong, And also this cross between Wolverine and Steve Urkel, which is a weird meta thing because Sonic is played by the Steve Urkel actor, so I don't know what the fuck. They're barely even parodies. They show up for like a panel or two, right? Like one little picture and then they're gone. I don't even understand the purpose of these. Often they're more just like references than actual story plot, and I kind of hate them. There's an issue where Robotnik falls in love with Sally because he doesn't realize it's her. My favorite thing from these issues is an evil Sonic from an alternate dimension who's a freedom fighter. Unlike Sonic, who's fighting for freedom, his definition of freedom fighter means he fights against freedom, and that's kind of funny to me. But overall, I'm not really a fan of these issues, and not a lot is happening. So let's head to the UK, where the Sonic comic is still going. It still has its ongoing series with other Genesis franchises. You got Echo, Golden Axe, Eternal Champion, Shinobi, Wonder Boy, Streets of Rage, Mutant League, Decap Attack, Marco's Magic Football, whatever that is. And Tails even has his own unrelated stories, where whenever Sonic needs a break from him, he will travel to a fantasy world or a cyberpunk world, etc. Actual Sonic-wise though, there's an issue where Sonic dreams that he's a human, and fortunately we both agree he is an ugly human. There's the Marxio brothers that are some weird parody of the Mario brothers, and they run the casino world and are in multiple issues. Porker Lewis is also back, and weirdly he is a main cast member now. I don't remember if I heard this or if someone said this to me. I can't remember the source, but it was along the lines of somewhere out there was a kid who grew up with Porker Lewis being their favorite Sonic character. And that's fucking wild. Super Sonic is kind of a maniac when he becomes super, but also he apparently doesn't even need the emeralds anymore. He can just turn into Super Sonic if shit hits the fan. Kintobor, which is Robotnik before Robotnik, now has a consciousness that lives within a computer and helps Sonic and the team. And when Eggman changes forms for what he looks like, he literally turns into an egg and then hatches into a new Robotnik, and I do like that. Amy is here and is still depicted as having a huge crush on Sonic, but he doesn't reciprocate. Also, let me make a statement. I said that Amy and Sonic ended up dating and so the ages were weird. However, upon investigation, because I had a comment that pointed it out, it doesn't look like there are many instances of that actually happening. And a lot of it has just been fans putting it together, and I guess my brain just said that they were together, but I guess they are not, and so I guess it does work out still that she's just like an 8-year-old kid who has a crush and he doesn't reciprocate it. Especially in these earlier ones, where she really does kind of feel like a little kid, whereas in later ones, she definitely feels more Sonic's age. Also, she wears her quills up sometimes, I guess. The Freedom Fighters here are Sonic, Tails, Amy, Porker, and a rabbit called Johnny Lightfoot. And sometimes Sally shows up, but usually she's gone, unlike in Archie where she's a main character in most issues. Amy here also has a crossbow, which is very interesting that she was using that before the hammer, and I don't actually hate it, I kinda dig it. We also get a Metal Sonic fight and a whole Sonic CD tie-in, but it makes it feel like they actually wanted to make it, and it wasn't just an obligation. We also meet Cosmic the Hedgehog. He's not a real thing though, he's just a shapeshifter pretending to be a character called Cosmic the Hedgehog. And I love the attitude Sonic has. He's been known for attitude, but it really comes off as very funny to me in these. Hold up, Sonic, you could be rushing into a deadly trap. Well, if I never see you again, Tails, this is how I'll always remember you. As a two-tailed dimwit who's always whining. Sonic, you saved me. Actually, I was just saving Emerald Hill Zone. Saving you was just, a bonus? Well, not when I think about it, no. Harsh, Sonic, harsh. I love it. Sonic, I don't like the look of that face. I don't much like the look of your face. Am I complaining? Knuckles even makes an appearance to kind of tell the Sonic 3 story, but slightly differently. He even shows up in later issues to help Sonic. In one issue, Eggman steals Sonic's speed and becomes blue, and then Sonic has to get that reversed. There's also kid fan art that's so bad you might think the actual artists of the comic drew it. Anyway, despite what I just said, I like Sonic the comic far more than the Archie ones. It's a lot more fun to read and has a lot more original, interesting ideas. This went on from issue 17 to 41 within this year. Alright, let's jump to 1995.